So you may have a child who is recently diagnosed with a developmental disability, and you keep hearing about this regional center. Or maybe you want to conserve your child, get a limited conservatorship over your child, but they keep talking about you need to be a consumer of the regional center. What's everybody talking about? What is the regional center? I'm going to go over what the regional center is and does, and how you and your family might be participating in it. Okay, so the history of the United States with developmental disabilities is a pretty dark one, to be honest. For years, individuals with developmental disabilities were basically locked up and they threw away the key. They did horrible treatments for them. It was ugly. Around the 1950s, families who had children with developmental disabilities started really trying to get services for them and not just have them institutionalized. They created their own community support services as an alternative for institutionalized care. Now these families, mostly moms, they're my heroes. They really pushed this forward. In 1969, there was huge legislation that was passed to address this. It was the Lanterman Mental Retardation Act. And that's what they used to call some developmental disabilities. So that established the regional care system, which today includes 21 regional centers throughout California. So I have a map of the regional centers right here. The ones that I typically deal with my clients in San Mateo County and San Francisco County, they use the Golden Gate Regional Center. And in Santa Clara County, we have the San Andreas Regional Center. But you can see they're all over California. By the way, regional centers are unique to California. I'm not aware of any regional centers anywhere else in the US. So how can one be eligible for regional center services? And we'll talk about what those services might be in just a little bit. So to be eligible, or to be what they call a consumer, you need to have a developmental disability and be a resident of the state of California. Well, that sounds pretty straightforward, right? So what is a developmental disability? Well, this is a disability that began before age 18. It's expected to continue indefinitely, and it constitutes a substantial disability for the individual. So what is a substantial disability? So this is where at least 3 items are affected. And those 3 things would be self-care, receptive and expressive language, learning, mobility, self-direction, capacity for independent living, and economic self-sufficiency. If at least 3 of those things are affected, that's a substantial disability. So what types of disabilities might be included? Well, really, there aren't that many types. Let me tell you the ones that do qualify. So that might be an intellectual disability. It could be cerebral palsy, it could be epilepsy, it could be autism, or it could be a disabling condition that's similar to an intellectual disability and needs similar treatment, but perhaps it's not specifically an intellectual disability. Now notice what I didn't say. This does not include someone with a learning disability. It doesn't include a psychiatric condition or a mental health challenge. And it doesn't include a physical health challenge. Well, why not? Well, that's just not what regional centers have been developed to address. Now note that if someone has what we call a dual diagnosis, let's say somebody has autism and psychiatric disability. Well, in that case, they might be able to qualify for the regional center just based on the autism component, not based on the psychiatric disability. Now, here's one of the amazing things about regional centers. With this public benefit, they do not look at your income or your assets. It really is just based on what type of disability does your child have. And there's 2 main programs. One of the programs is the Early Start program, so that's ages 0 to 3. And then the other program is in what most people are in, it's ages 3+. It's actually called Over 3 services. So let's say your child might fall into one of these categories. How would you apply? Well, you'll want to contact the regional center in your county. Remember that map. So look at that map and see which county you're in and which regional center is it. So you reach out to them, then you'll speak with an intake coordinator there. They'll do an intake process. The regional center then does a full assessment of your child, and they'll determine whether your child is eligible for services based on that substantial disability test. So if they are eligible, the regional center will implement what we call an individualized program plan, an IPP, within 60 days to determine which services are provided. So it's not actually the regional center that ends up providing the services. It's not like the regional center has all these people under their employment who do OT, PT services. No, actually, they contract out to third-party vendors who then provide the services. And the regional center works at getting those services provided for by, let's say, private insurance or Medi-Cal or some other payer program. The regional center is the payer of last resort. So the regional center basically helps you get connected with those vendors that they have already approved. So what services might be provided? Well, you might get some in-home respite care. If you're providing services for your child, you might get some care so you can go out and catch your breath and do something you need to do. There are transportation services. There's adult daycare services. They also help to set up housing and transportation for your child. And they also help with supported employment. And finally, they do behavioral services as well. Now, one thing that started very recently that's really exciting is called the Self-Determination Program. So it started kind of as a pilot program in 2013. And now, starting in 2021, it's now available to anybody who's a consumer of the regional center. Basically, what happens is the consumer and their family work to get a budget, and they have more flexibility to choose which vendors meet their objectives and to come up with a spending plan for that budget. So now it's more consumer driven. It's not just that the regional center looks up from on high and says, these are the things that we think you need and this is what we're going to provide, but they give the consumer more input. Now that's a topic for another day, because Self-Determination Program is awesome. And they actually have some videos online at your regional center. They should have some videos walking you through how to participate in that. And I strongly urge you to look into the Self-Determination Program. I've heard rave reviews from certain people who have participated. Okay, so how does all of this relate to a limited conservatorship? Well, here's the thing. A limited conservatorship, once your child turns 18, if they have a developmental disability and they're a consumer at the regional center, you can apply for a limited conservatorship. If they're not a consumer of the regional center, honestly, you can't file for a limited conservatorship because the regional center is required to do a report on your child. That's one of the pieces of information that the court collects during this court investigation process to see, does your child need to be under a limited conservatorship? Okay, so a lot of people find out about regional centers once their child turns 18 and they go, uh-oh, we need to be a consumer of the regional center, and that might be when they apply. So there's no particular age that you're required to apply. A lot of people will apply earlier to receive those benefits, those services, but some people actually will apply just so that they can get a conservatorship over their child. So it's important for you to know that the regional center and the limited conservatorship process, those two are linked. Now, to learn more about limited conservatorships, I encourage you to watch my video on limited conservatorships right over here, and I'll see you there.